The United States government demolished a town in the Missouri Ozarks in 1941. Not abandoned it, not evacuated it, demolished it. Around 400 families were given 90 days to collect their belongings and leave. When they were gone, the Army knocked the buildings down, buried the foundations, closed the roads, and built a military installation on top of everything those families had left behind. That is town number 1 on this list. But it is far from the strangest. The Ozarks have been swallowing their own communities for 2 centuries. Some went underwater. Some went toxic. One was demolished by the federal government and is now inside a military base that civilians cannot legally enter. One was home to a headless ghost that locals have been reporting independently for over 100 years. One still has a road sign welcoming visitors to a town that does not exist. One was a presidential convention site that nobody attended, and then went underwater 30 years later. The hills kept them. The water kept some of them. The Army fence keeps one of them. And most people who drive through the Ozarks on their way to somewhere else have no idea that the ground beneath their tires is holding the bones of communities that someone once loved enough to build from nothing. These are 13 of them, and you should know about everyone. Subscribe right now, hit the button and the bell. Number 1 is Bloodland, Missouri, in Pulaski County. In 1940, the Army selected land in the Missouri Ozarks to build what would become Fort Leonard Wood. That land included a functioning rural community called Bloodland, named for an early settler. The families received official notice that they had to leave. Their land had been condemned. Their homes would be demolished. The families left. The Army cleared everything. The church, the school, the homes, demolished or absorbed into the military installation that grew up around them. The community's church bell was the only thing removed before demolition. It was relocated to Waynesville, where it still stands as the only physical remnant of a community the United States Army erased from the Ozarks map. Fort Leonard Wood now covers over 61,000 acres. Bloodland is somewhere inside that fence. Soldiers stationed there have reported unexplained activity in the training areas built over the old town site since the 1940s. You cannot go there. The families who lived in Bloodland cannot go there. An American community was demolished to build a military base, and the land where it stood remains inaccessible to everyone except the Army that took it. Number 2 is Old Lynn Creek, Missouri, in Camden County. Old Lynn Creek was not just a town. It was the county seat of Camden County. The courthouse, the churches, the post office, the school. Families had lived in the Osage River Valley long enough that the town felt permanent in the way county seats feel permanent. In 1931, Bagnell Dam was completed and the Lake of the Ozarks began filling. Old Lynn Creek went under, the courthouse went under, the churches went under, portions of the cemetery went under before anyone thought to relocate them. The families were compensated and relocated to higher ground. A legend has persisted since. On still days, when the lake is quiet and the light comes down through the water at a certain angle, people say you can hear the old church bell ringing from beneath the surface. The bell cannot ring. It has been underwater for over 90 years. But the story persists specifically because of what happened to Old Lynn Creek. It was not abandoned, it was taken. And the county of Camden, Missouri, now has a county seat built on a ridge above a town that was deliberately drowned below it. Number 3 is Oronogo, Missouri, in Jasper County. Oronogo was a lead and zinc mining community that hit its peak during World War I, when the Tri-State Mining District was supplying more than half the nation's zinc for military manufacturing. The ore came out of the ground in quantities that seemed inexhaustible. They were not inexhaustible. The companies left. The chat piles, mountains of toxic waste saturated with lead, cadmium, and zinc, stayed. Oronogo is now part of the Oronogo-Duanweg Mining Belt Superfund site, a 646 square mile contamination zone the EPA has been working to clean up since 1990. Over 3,000 residential properties have been remediated. 6 child care centers had their soil removed and replaced. The groundwater cleanup has been described by federal regulators as not feasible because the contamination has spread through an abandoned underground mine network that cannot be reversed. The ore ran out. The companies moved on. The federal government and the people who live there are still dealing with what was left behind. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters. Number 4 is Rush, Arkansas, in Marion County on the Buffalo River. In 1886, prospectors built a smelter on Rush Creek expecting silver. What came out was green zinc oxide fumes. No silver. They were disappointed for a decade, until World War I made zinc one of the most strategically critical metals on Earth. By 1916, Rush was a boomtown with 10 companies operating 13 mines. A mine from Rush won a blue ribbon at the 1892 Chicago World's Fair. Then World War I ended and zinc prices collapsed. By the 1950s, the town was emptying. In 1972, it was absorbed into the Buffalo National River. Today, you can hike a 4-mile trail through the complete ruins. The 1886 smelter still stands. Log cabins line the creek. Mine entrances are gated shut to protect the bat colonies living inside them. Rush is one of the only places in America where you can walk through not just the mines, but the entire community the mines created and then destroyed. Number 5 is Smollett, Missouri, in Douglas County. Smollett is not abandoned in the conventional sense. The community faded, but the folklore stayed. For over 100 years, across multiple generations of independent witnesses, a red light has been reported appearing near the road and the creek in this Douglas County hollow. Folklorist Vance Randolph documented the community's oral tradition in the mid-20th century. Inside Smollett Cave, locals heard the sound of cobbling, a shoemaker tapping, from underground with no explanation. A local elder left behind a specific warning passed down through families. If you ever see a red light, run. That sentence was not said for effect. It was practical instruction from someone who had grown up knowing that this particular piece of the Ozarks held something the community had decided not to investigate. Number 6 is North Forktown, Missouri, in Ozark County. North Forktown sat at the confluence of the North Fork of the White River and Bryant Creek, one of the oldest continuously inhabited communities in the Missouri Ozarks. In 1952, Bull Shoals Dam was completed across the White River in Arkansas. The lake filled northward into Missouri. North Forktown went under. The families relocated with government compensation checks and the specific grief of leaving a place that is not being abandoned, but drowned. In low water years, the foundations occasionally resurface. Then the water rises and they disappear again. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters. Number 7 is Melva, Missouri, in Taney County. Melva sat along the railway between Harrison and Springfield, with a hotel, a rail station, and a Presbyterian missionary named Lucy Woods. On April 9, 1917, a tornado struck Melva. 11 people were killed. 9 of them were children. The community did not rebuild. Today, Melva is accessible only on foot deep in the hills south of Branson, which draws millions of visitors annually a few miles away. The forest has taken everything back except the documentation in the White River Valley Historical Society's records and the permanent quiet of a place that lost 9 children in minutes and never recovered. Number 8 is Treese, Kansas, at the edge of the Ozarks Plateau. Treese was part of the same tri-state mining district as Oronogo. Children who swam in Tar Creek came out with chemical burns. Blood lead levels in the population were chronically elevated. In 2012, after years of EPA buyouts, the last holdouts left and the buildings were demolished. Treese ceased to exist as a community. An entire American town erased because the mining industry poisoned it, walked away, and was not legally required to stay and fix what it destroyed. Number 9 is Cane Hill, Arkansas, in Washington County. By 1834, Cane Hill had a college, Cane Hill College, one of the first institutions of higher education west of the Mississippi River. The Civil War gutted it. The Battle of Cane Hill in November 1862, combined with the broader destruction of the war years, broke the community permanently. The college never recovered. Today, Cane Hill is foundations and headstones, with cemetery graves dating to the 1830s. The college that predated most American institutions west of the Mississippi is gone. The town that hosted a Civil War battle is invisible from any road. Number 10 is Pepper Sauce, Arkansas, also known as East Calico, in Ozark County. This is the ghost town inside a living town. Calico Rock functions as a small, active community. On its eastern edge, separated by a matter of blocks, sits a ghost town frozen in place. The buildings are still standing: a pool hall, a barber shop, a theater, a funeral parlor, all empty and deteriorating. When the timber ran out, the eastern half of Calico Rock stopped. The western half kept going. You can walk from a functioning cafe to a ghost town in under 10 minutes. One block, the present. The next block, a century earlier. Same zip code, same sky. Same sky, different world. Number 11 is Marble Cave City, Missouri, near what is now Branson. Before Silver Dollar City existed, before the entertainment strip on Highway 76 existed, a community had grown up around the entrance to a cave called Marble Cave in the Taney County Hills. A mining engineer descended it by rope in the 1890s and found one of the largest cave rooms in the Missouri Ozarks. A community grew around it. That community is now gone, completely absorbed and built over by the theme park that was eventually constructed around the cave entrance. Silver Dollar City is literally built on the bones of a ghost town. Marble Cave, which park visitors ride an elevator to reach, is what remains of a community that most of them will never know existed. Number 12 is the Ozark Medieval Fortress, Arkansas, near Lead Hill. In 2008, a French nonprofit began constructing a full-scale medieval castle in the Ozark Mountains using only 13th century building techniques. No power tools, hand-cut stone, wooden cranes, horse-drawn carts. The project was modeled on the Guédelon Castle experiment in France, which has been building successfully since 1997. The Arkansas version lasted 2 years before the funding ran out. The partially built walls, hand-cut stone, medieval workshops, the whole structure were left in the Ozark forest behind a fence. A 13th century castle, abandoned, growing back into the forest near Bull Shoals Lake. Not because the idea was wrong, because the money stopped. In another 100 years, someone will find these stones and spend decades trying to figure out who built a medieval castle in Arkansas and why they stopped halfway through. Number 13 is Montigny, Arkansas, in the hills east of Rogers. In 1901, a man named William Hope Harvey, known as Coin Harvey, the second best-selling nonfiction author in America behind only the Bible, purchased 300 acres in a valley and began building a health resort he named Montigny. It had hotels built from native stone and timber so large they were among the biggest log structures in the world. Guests arrived by private rail spur. An Italian gondola imported specifically for the purpose carried them across a custom-built lagoon. There was an indoor swimming pool with slides, the first in Arkansas, a golf course, tennis courts, a bowling alley, a ballroom. Harvey's finances collapsed. The automobiles came and travelers stopped needing destination resorts. The buildings were foreclosed and repurposed. Then, in 1932, Harvey held a national political convention at his failing resort and ran for president. He expected 10,000 delegates. 786 showed up. It was the only presidential convention ever held in the state of Arkansas. It took place at a bankrupt resort in an Ozark valley that was going to be underwater within 30 years. Harvey spent his final years designing a 130-foot stone pyramid that would preserve books and records for future civilizations to find after humanity destroyed itself. The pyramid was never finished. Harvey died in 1936. In 1964, The Army Corps of Engineers completed Beaver Lake directly upstream. Montigny went under. Here is the detail that makes Montigny impossible to forget. When Beaver Lake drops during dry years, Montigny reappears. The amphitheater steps emerge from the receding waterline. The hotel foundations surface. The concrete walls rise from the lake covered in algae and surrounded by still falling water. People drive down Montigny Road and walk to the water's edge and watch a drowned town slowly reveal itself. Then the rains come, the lake rises, and Montigny slides back under the surface to wait. A resort built by a man who believed civilization was doomed, drowned by the federal government, rising from the water when the rain stops, sinking again when it starts. The Ozarks holding it in place the same way the Ozarks holds everything. Tight enough that you cannot forget it, loose enough that it keeps appearing when you least expect it. That is what the hills are hiding. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. Which one of these did you already know about? Because if you have been to any of them, we want to hear what you found. Thank you for watching. The truth doesn't shout. It waits for you to look closer.